Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. I'm always grateful. If you haven't seen the presentation made by Lilian Kabebia, who's the youngest partner and a female one at Deloitte, she's a specialist in indirect tax. Take a look at that, please. Macro thoughts, my goodness, what a 24-hour period, or even less. Yellen says forces holding down rates may be long-lasting, so she's bailed. Seems to be coming around to what her one-time rival Lawrence Summers has been arguing for a while. Some of the forces holding down interest rates may be long-lasting and secular. That's reflected in a marked downgrade in rate projections released by policymakers after their meeting on Wednesday. 6 of 17 now see only one rate rise this year. The central bank lifted rates from 0 in December last year, and I think, this is the point I was making, is that she's going to miss her opportunity because the world is not getting more certain, it's getting less certain. In a blog posting Tuesday, former Treasury Secretary Summers likened the Fed's actions in recent months to Groundhog Day. He's right on that. It keeps poking its head up, hoping to raise interest rates, only to back away in the end. Fed's Yellen mixed data justifies cautious approach. Markets have repriced rate hike expectations. No hike is now expected this year. Dollar yen went through the floor. Let me tell you where we are now. 103.68, a 231 tick move. Enormous. When David Inglis tweeted it, we were just hitting 104.53 and we piled through that. Obviously, one of the big issues and event risks is presented by Brexit. I wrote about it over the weekend. If I can just reiterate some of the points I made. I said Margaret Thatcher, who was a totemic leader of the Conservative Party and was fond of swinging her handbag in negotiations with recalcitrant Europeans, never called a referendum in this matter, and for good reason. Therefore, whilst this vote is laudable, putting the question squarely in front of the British people, it was always plain risky politically, not least of which because every politician, every strike in the UK has slagged off the EU for years and years and years. Now to reverse that is very difficult. The Brexit vote on June the 23rd and the Donald Trump candidacy. Hillary Clinton did surge in the previous week and administered a brutal slapdown with a tweet to Donald Trump to delete the account, are what I would term event risk correlated. A terrorist attack in the US in the run-up to the presidential vote would give Donald Trump huge traction, though he blew it, I think, with Florida, and might well put him over the top. Similarly, something in Europe or the UK in the run-up to the referendum could do the same. The markets are now faced with 2 weeks of uncertainty, and then the question arises, what happens if the UK exits the European Union? Modelling that scenario is not easy, and that is why volatility has spiked. Sterling got over 142 yesterday, the traders high as 142.10, I should know, it was on short. Biggest jump since June 7, and remember it touched 140.91 on Tuesday, which was the lowest since April 14. Home thoughts, look at this, a magical night sky at Shaba National Reserve in the Samburu. The Samburu is an extraordinary place, it really is. The Dalai Lama was received by President Obama, but I like this photograph that the New York Times posted of him. And just 2 quotes. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. Brilliant. My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness. And that took me back to probably my favorite quote, which is by Rumi. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, yet again, come, come. Political reflections, Obama's defining attack on Trump and Trumpism. This is in the New Yorker, and let me tell you what it says. Gone were the lofty detachment and professorial tone that sometimes characterize his oration. In their place were flashing eyes, hand gestures, and a tone that varied from urgency to anger. Speaking for about 25 minutes, Obama delivered a ringing defense of his approach to terrorism and a stinging denouncement of Donald Trump and all that he stands for. Whether Obama intended to deliver such a consequential address, I'm not entirely sure. At times he appeared to be ad-libbing, which is interesting because he doesn't normally. His remarks, which were delivered from a podium in the Treasury Department where he had met with national security staff, turned into perhaps the most important address he has given this year. Indeed, historians may look back on it as one of the defining speeches of his presidency. Obama didn't utter Trump's name. He didn't need to. Instead, he began by saluting the Orlando victims and their families. He described the shooter, whom he also didn't name, as an angry, disturbed, unstable young man who became radicalized. By their nature, lone wolf attacks are hard to stop. Obama pointed out, and he praised the law enforcement intelligence efforts that go into preventing them. But he added, we are all sobered by the fact that despite the extraordinary hard work, something like Orlando can occur. Turning to the home front, Obama issued another call for common sense gun control measures, which he rightly insisted were consistent with the Second Amendment. We have to make it harder for people who want to kill Americans to get their hands on weapons of war. And let them kill dozens of innocents. About now, the first glints of irritation or anger appeared in the president's eyes. Enough talking about being tough on terrorism, he snapped. Actually, be tough on terrorism and stop making it as easy as possible for terrorists to buy assault weapons. With that, Obama paused for a few seconds, as if gathering himself for what he was about to do. Let me make a final point, he said. For a while now, the main contribution of some of my friends on the other side of the aisle in the fight against ISIL has been to criticize this administration and me for not using the phrase radical Islam. That's the key, they tell us. We can't beat ISIL unless we call them radical Islamists. For a moment, Obama looked down. What exactly would using this label accomplish, he said. Would it bring in more allies? Is there a military strategy that is served by this? The answer is none of the above. Calling a threat by a different name does not make it go away. This is a political distraction. Obama's tone had changed. It was harder and more than a little scornful. Actually, Ekman, who's one of my favorite writers about, in the very famous book, What the Face Reveals, says that Obama has quite a temper. Conclusions. Myself, a very good friend of mine called Lynn Menuhin, who now works for Diageo, and a lady called Cosimo von Bülow, who was extremely, and I'm sure she still is, attractive and a wonderful person, actually. We once had the pleasure of spending an evening with Donald Trump at Tramp, which is a nightclub in London. He wasn't what he is today then. Put up a link for Tramp, but I agree with POTUS. Donald Trump campaign is surreal and strangely lovely. Obama hosted the Dalai Lama at the White House as China protested. We all knew the folks in Beijing would be very unhappy. And Xi Jinping obviously has got a number of issues with President Obama at this moment. Then I came across this, which was by a Muslim mullah. Death is the sentence for gay sex acts in public. And I was taken aback, I must admit, when I was talking to everyone around my office in particular. And in Africa, there is a very hardline approach to homosexuality. Something which I don't entirely agree with, because I've had friends who I've known for years. When I look back on it, I can see that they were what they were from way back. Let me put up a photo of the IRGC Quds Force commander, Qasem Soleimani, reportedly in the Sayyida Zainab shrine in Damascus. And he's a bit of a totemic figure of the resistance. Busting through 105 was what Holger tweeted earlier this morning. We bust through 104 now. Japanese yen, I've been bullish about since the beginning of the year. In fact, on the 11th of January, I said that I was talking about the yen, and I said one of my conviction trades of 2016, and this is early January, we were something like 118, I think, is to buy the yen against just about everything I wrote. I put out a target of 105, which we bust today, and even 95. Let's go to the currency markets, plenty going on there. 112.74 euro dollar. Dollar index 94.34. Japanese yen 103.77. Swissy 0.9590. The pound 141.56. And it's going to be volatile now in the run-up to the vote. The Aussie 0.7357, so that's also taken a big tumble. India rupee 67.155, South Korean won 11.7032, Rial 347.46, Egyptian pound 8.88, and the rand, let me double check because I'm sure that's moved around quite a bit. The dollar rand 15.3769, big move early this morning. We were at 15.21 when I walked in the office. I'll put up a one-year chart of dollar yen. As I said from the beginning of the year, look for 105. We got to 105, and I think we can get to 95. Have a look at this one-year chart. Sterling, let me put up a 3-month chart. I think we're going to hit 136.50 ahead of the vote, or close to it. And I think if the UK votes to leave, we're going to go down to 125. But that will probably be an enormous entry opportunity. Sub-zero German yields risk creating vicious cycle for investors. Have a look at the German yield curve as presented by Bloomberg. Gold, oh my goodness, 1309.30. Let's see if we can hold up here or whether we're going to fall back down to just below 1300. But basically, we're back in a world of incredible uncertainty. You remember Ben Bernanke's comment about why do you hold gold? And he said it's because of really, really bad possible outcomes. Let's move on to oil. Crude oil, US crude, around the $48 level. It's curtains, in my opinion. The bull market, the rebound is over. If you're buying it now, you're buying it on a trading buy basis, because structurally we're going to go back and look at the 40 level. Sub-Saharan Africa, Cult of Dos Santos and the State of Angola by Karen Allen. In many ways, the Angolan capital, Luanda, feels like Africa's best kept secret. 15 years after emerging from a bitter civil war in which Cold War rivalries were counted in lives lost, parts of the city, parts look like Dubai. Smart-fronted buildings reach up to the sky, and virtually every vehicle downtown is a large, shimmering 4x4. This is what oil money looks like. It has paid for Angola's impressive infrastructural development, 5 ports, an expansive road network, a welfare state that many other African nations could only dream of, with hospitals populated by top-class Cuban doctors and schools where the textbooks are free. Yet when global oil prices plummeted, the cracks began to show. Angola found itself in a fiscal crisis, unable to pay the bills, restock its hospitals, pay the doctors, or collect the rubbish. The yellow fever outbreak helped to expose the shortcomings of what some consider to have been skewed priorities, and a sense of complacency in a country that imports most of what it needs and depends almost exclusively on oil. At the helm of this African oil giant is President Jose Eduardo dos Santos, a man who has led Angola for the past 37 years. You'll recall that photograph which I put up yesterday, where he was meeting President Kenyatta. You can see from the color of his skin that he's got a kidney or a liver complaint. He has declared his intention to stand down from office after elections next year. Stepping down would seem to indicate a loosening of his grip in power and a change of direction, but the appointment of his daughter to a top job suggests otherwise. Isabel dos Santos, the richest woman in Africa, purely by her own genius, no doubt, has just been named president of the state oil giant Sonangol. She has a reputation as a slick operator, has interests that range from telecoms, real estate, diamonds, and is considered an accomplished businesswoman in her own right, by Karen, obviously. She has, in the words of journalist Simon Allison, shattered the glass ceiling of Africa's male-dominated business world. Sonangol is responsible for half of Angola's GDP. Plans to privatize the oil giant to make it more productive and transparent do little to appease skeptics such as Rafael Marquez, the human rights campaigner and journalist. He questions how much Angola is really transforming. The oil crisis has exposed problems in the way our country is run, he says, and until that is addressed and Angola gets a properly functioning democracy, little will have changed. This skewed economy protects the wealth of a privileged few. Will continue to be vulnerable to external shocks, and foreign investors risk perpetrating that system of patronage. Meanwhile, President Dos Santos' son, Jose Filomeno de Sousa dos Santos, is now in charge of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, has also found himself in the spotlight. The fund, designed to promote development for the poor through the use of oil revenues, is estimated to be worth $5 billion. But it has been dismissed by some as a device to launder money out of Angola. He's ruled the oil-rich nation for 37 years, but it doesn't look too well. Luanda, in my opinion, is in disequilibrium. I wrote about this in August 2015 when I said the end is nigh for crude oil and oil exporters from Caracas to Luanda, from Riyadh to Abuja. Oil-based economies are going to contract. Currencies which have already collapsed are going to be routed, and Greek-style austerity will be the order of the day. The meltdown is coming. And then I quoted Kapuscinski: if the crowd disperses and goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. I was saying the revolution is only just beginning. Let me put up the photograph of Uhuru Kenyatta with other heads of state for the 6th ordinary meeting of the ICGLR held yesterday in Luanda. Angola, the World Bank is stepping up, the IMF is stepping up, can receive a maximum $4.5 billion of a loan which can be repaid in less than 10 years. Maintaining fiscal prudence in the run-up to the 2017 elections will be critical. I somehow don't think it's going to be possible. Angola's GDP is slowed to 3% in 2015, and inflation was at an annualized 26% through May. Today is the 40th anniversary of Sharpeville. I'll put up a photograph of a sign saying "Welcome to Sharpeville," and also a photograph of Soweto, taken more recently. Oscar Pistorius walked on stumps in the court in a bid to avoid jail. The lower part of the athlete's legs were amputated when he was a baby, and he is known as Blade Runner for the carbon fiber prosthetics he wore when racing. Pistorius' lawyer Barry Rue asked his client to walk in the court on his stumps to show the difficulty he faced whilst dealing with the threat of an intruder. His body shaking with emotion, Pistorius then removed his prosthetics and stood on his stumps for 5 minutes in front of the court television camera, wiping tears from his face with a tissue. The accused was vulnerable because of his disability, Rue said, asking for a non-custodial sentence that included community service. In response, prosecutor Jerry Nell asked the court to display photos of Steenkamp's bloodied head and torso after the shooting. South African oil share up 2.63% this year. Dollar rand, as I said, looks as if it's about to shoot towards 16. Egyptian EGX 30 up 5.83% so far this year. Nigeria has launched a market-driven interbank trading system, says Emefiele, who's had his finger in the dike for over a year. The Windows exchange rate will be purely market-driven, Emefiele told reporters. The new system would help with economic growth and restore investor confidence. My conclusions are it's the right decision, but it's a year late. Naira forward contracts surged to a record as traders anticipated this move. 12-month non-deliverable forwards surged 3.3% to 352, a record on a closing basis. Official rate was 197. If they do what Egypt did, it won't work. Egypt didn't allow the currency market to clear, and investors, for the most part, still haven't re-entered the market. That's also the concern with Nigeria, that they won't go far enough. The Nigerian all-share surged 3.17% yesterday, and it's down just 2.62% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange down 11.33% so far this year. The Metical in Maputo plunged 10% on Wednesday to a record low of 66 to the dollar. IMF fund team arrived in Mozambique on Wednesday, trying to find a way out of a sovereign debt crisis that is crippling the economy of one of the world's poorest countries and could trigger social and political unrest. Diplomats were not optimistic about the success of the June 16, 2024 IMF mission, given the anger among donor nations after the government ran up more than $2 billion in private debt deals behind their back. Frelimo has its own version of accountability, which normally involves car crashes or people disappearing. One regional diplomat said, the number one priority is to get some of this money back. Well, let's see. It really is a story of being a hero. 2014, Africa Rising, I was there. Today, I put up a photograph of an evening falling over Maputo that I took when I was there. Ethiopia protest crackdown killed hundreds. Human Rights Watch. Ethiopian security forces have killed more than 400 protesters and others, and arrested tens of thousands more during widespread protests in the Oromia region since November 2015. The Ethiopian government should urgently support a credible, independent investigation into the killings, arbitrary arrests and other abuses. That's not going to happen, is it? Here in Kenya, a liquid money market has seen the rate at which banks lend to each other fall to 2.5%, which I believe is a 4-year low, from a high of 25% 9 months ago. Now, in terms of volume, there's been a decline, with banks lending each other just 45 billion shillings compared to 60 billion in the previous week. That's the important point. The system is broken. Its tier 1 banks are not lending to anyone else except themselves. 91-day Treasury bill is now at 7.3%, 182-day and 364-day are 9.6 and 10.8%. What's happening here is you've got all this liquidity concentrated in the tier 1 banks. What are they doing with it? They're buying government bonds and bills. Safaricom set a fresh closing high of 1830 yesterday. It's up 12.26% this year. Huge surge, really lifting the all share, which is flat for the year. So you can see the outperformance. At the time of the results, when I interviewed Bob, that link is up there, I said there are not many companies in the world able to deliver these kinds of numbers and raise the dividend by such an amount. The world is catching up with the story. Have a look at the interview I did with Bob after his full year results. China is now Kenya's largest credit, accounting for 57% of the country's total external debt. Figure has grown quickly. Chinese loans to Kenya grew at an annual rate of 54% between 2010 and 2014, shilling 101.28, but it is Teflon. Nairobi all share plus 0.55% so far this year, compared that to Safaricom. NSE 20 down 5.98% so far this year. More tourists, and this is not good news, are turning away from Kenya as election insecurity worries grow. And really, the opposition's strategy has been one of degrading the economy, and it's working for them quite well. It's asymmetric, but it's working for them. Once again, thank you for stopping by.